My mom went missing 3 years ago. I just received her final text. You'll never understand the feeling of arguing with your mom, only for them to go missing the next day. After my mom revealed that I was an accident and should have been aborted, I blocked her on everything and refused to speak to her. It wasn't until the police showed up at my house the next day when I realized how much I'd regret arguing with her. Of course, I became a suspect in my mother's disappearance. An angry daughter gets into an argument, and her mom goes missing soon after? Pretty suspicious on my part. At first, I'd assumed she just went into hiding to prove a point that I would miss her, so I did my best to stay positive. However, as 4 months passed by, I slowly realized she wasn't hiding, and that there was something much more sinister going on here. After the detectives closed the case, I moved into my parents' house to take care of my dad, since he was completely distraught by her disappearance. After seeing my dad get ill from grief, I knew I had to figure out what happened, and I had a horrible feeling that it might have been because of me. I was so wrong. 3 years went past after that with no sign of her. Life had been somewhat normal, but I missed her more and more every day. This is when the dreams started. They started out small. I'd happen to hear my mother's voice crying, or see her staring at me from down a flight of stairs while I was dreaming in my sleep. It was definitely creepy, but I brushed it off as my subconscious dealing with everything. One night, however, the dream got intense. I was sitting in my room when I could hear a scratching sound coming all the way from the basement door. Without thinking, I got up and went downstairs to investigate the noise. The sound was slow and ominous. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Regardless of its creepiness, I opened the basement door. On the other side of it stood my mother, half decayed and frowning in rage. She grabbed me by the arm and threw me down the stairs, where I landed on my neck, breaking it with a hard crack. Just before I woke up, my eyes landed on a clothes trunk sitting in the corner. I flew awake in a cold sweat, grabbing my neck. Even knowing it was just a dream, it still didn't sit right with me. I'd promised myself to see a doctor about this, since the grief was getting unbearable. The next night, the dream became even more vivid. I actually tried to stay awake as long as possible, not wanting to see my mom in my dreams. No one can stay awake forever, and I caved at about 3 a.m. The dream started out with my mom sitting on my chest while I lay paralyzed in bed. She stared down at me furiously, holding my phone in her right hand. With her left hand, she pried my mouth open, took the phone, and then proceeded to shove it into my mouth. It went in horizontally, so that it bent my teeth back into my mouth. I could feel it as they broke off, falling back into my throat, where I choked violently on them. Blood overflowed my mouth and poured out of the sides of my cheeks. My mother leaned in and, in a deep, demonic voice, screamed, "Check your phone!" I woke up in tears and jumped out of bed. When it hit me that it had only been a dream, I breathed out a sigh of relief. I looked over at my phone, which had been sitting patiently on my nightstand. Should I? Was the first thought I had. Picking up my phone, I pulled up the Messenger app and scrolled through my contacts. When I finally reached Mom, I stopped. I held my breath and pressed the unblock option. A message immediately came through. "Diana, you have to come back, please. I got myself stuck in the clothes trunk in the basement. I can't get out." The date and time were July 17th, 2020, 4:45 p.m., a literal minute after I had blocked her. It felt as if the world around me had frozen. She couldn't still be in there, right? Dad had to have let her out or something. Unless, maybe that's not what she wanted. The only choice I had now was to look. I flicked the light onto the basement and began my descent down the stairs. I turned around, holding my hand to my mouth to stop myself from vomiting everywhere. I couldn't help myself, and I turned back around to stare at the corpse. There, in her hands, was her phone. Her last attempt at escaping and repairing the dead relationship between us. Please take my advice. Be nice to your parents.